All right, well, thank you for being here this morning. We're going to start today in Proverbs 3. In fact, you may not even need to turn there because we're going to be looking initially at some verses you're very familiar with. But today, we're going, it's been kind of, the weeks have been different depending on the subject that we've been looking at because the book of Proverbs, and we're going to land the plane with Proverbs today, and we could spend a lot more time in this book, but today I'm going to call it I'm going to call it quits in Proverbs, and we'll be picking up with something different next week. But Proverbs talks about a varied number of different subjects, but it does so oftentimes not successively, so that you're not in chapters 1 through 6 dealing with this subject, and 7 through 9 with that subject. And it's kind of, you've got particular topics that are sprinkled throughout the book of Proverbs. And so when you're trying to build a thought around some of this, you're going to have to look in a various number of places. And you know, I hate doing that. I hate having you do this back and forth, but we're going to do that today. It's going to be our last time, hopefully for a while, doing something like that. But it's going to be important for us to gather and see what God collectively says in the book of Proverbs about something that's really important to me, something that's really important to you, and that's this: decisions. We make a lot of them, don't we? Well, we just do. And some of them are big decisions, some of them aren't so big. Like what you're going to eat or where you're going to eat for lunch, that's not a big one. But whether or not you retire now or later, that's a bigger one. Whether you marry this person or that person, that's a big one. Whether you stay married to this person or that person, that's a really big one, isn't it? And so it's important for us as we are making decisions. Hopefully this is true of you. You would like to make good decisions, right decisions, decisions that God would want you to make, decisions that are reflective of wisdom. I mean, because how many of you ever woke up one day and you said, you know, I'd really like to make a foolish decision? Nobody aspires to that, but how many of you have woken up and said, you know, I really made a foolish decision? We have all done that. God has given us enough in His Word, enough guidance that if we pay attention to, we can avoid that. And so we can, if we take seriously and apply what God said, we can foolproof our decisions. All right, so we're going to be thinking about 8 particular thoughts or questions or principles that God has shared in His Word. If we pay attention to those, it'll absolutely have bearing and impact on how we make decisions and the choices that we make. So if you're a note taker, you might want to jot these down. If you're not, hopefully you are a sponge and they get into your mind and heart. But we're going to start in Proverbs 3 this morning with a very, very, very familiar passage of Scripture. Start looking with me at verses 5 and 6. God says to trust in the Lord, trust in Him with all of your heart. Don't rely on your own understanding. In all your ways, know or acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. He will make your paths straight. All right, so there is a very simple principle in this passage that God is using Solomon to tell us, that tells us about God and our decisions. Now, I don't know, if you had to say what you would, do you see anything there that's God communicating a principle about me and my decisions? I'll give it to you. It's really simple. God is interested in guiding them. God is interested and wants to guide your decisions. Because this is kind of given as an if-then sort of proposition. So if you do this, then God is going to do that. And so He says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't rely or don't lean on your own understanding. You know, it's interesting, and the extent to which you've thought about this throughout the course of your life, I don't know, but the reality is we are in many ways like ladders. Have you ever thought you were like a ladder? Some of you might say, I'm missing a rung or two, but like we're kind of like ladders in the sense that, do you know what you always do with a ladder? You lean it on something, don't you? And so when you came into this world, you were a ladder, and what did you lean on? Yeah, you lean on your parents, and more than anything, especially out of the gate, you lean on your mama, don't you? Because you got to, I mean, everything about your existence is dependent on the caregiving of someone else. Because like when you're a baby, you don't eat unless food is given to you. You don't move from room to room. In fact, you can't even hold your head up unless somebody is helping you. And so out of the gate, you are like a little ladder and you're leaning on mama and daddy. As you get a little bit older, and you don't have to be much older, you start to lean on some other people too, don't you? Who else do you start to lean on? You can lean on your teacher, but even before you see a teacher, you might lean on your siblings, might you? Especially if you're the baby, you've got some older siblings, and like for our younger kids, they are absolutely they are leaning on some of their older brothers or their sister. So you experience that. You'll experience some other people in the family, so like a grandparent, aunts, uncles, cousins. So we kind of start leaning on parents. But you know, to your point though, Donna, about teachers, I mean, the reality is in America, most children today in America, they spend the majority of their waking hours with who? With a teacher, with somebody that's not a part of their family. Because the majority of children come into this world either into single parent households where the single parent, typically the mom, works, or you've got a mom and a dad and both work, and so the children are going to daycare. And so children learn to lean on those teachers. Who else do they start to lean on? They start to lean on friends. And one of the things that's interesting, though, as you age and you develop as a ladder, you started, and how much did you lean on mama and daddy? 100%. By the time you are 15 years old, how much do you start to lean on mom and daddy? The goal is how much? 0. The goal is 0. And so, but you lean on them. You need food, gas money, now a cell phone, some spending money. But apart from that, you want to lean on them as little as possible. It's just the teenager way. All right, so, but what happens is that mom and dad start getting replaced more with who? With friends. And who's some others that we start to lean on? Well, it could be Sunday school teachers. It could be people at church. It could be, because sports, that's a big thing now for families, isn't it? So you got a lot of coaches that people are leaning on. What else might teenagers lean on? Well, just media in general. And so whether it's a movie star, or it could be leaning on some YouTube personality. Somebody that you've never heard of that's got 10 million followers on YouTube, but they're listening to their stuff and watching their podcast every day. Watching their, anyway. So they're starting to lean on that. All right, so you get into your 20s. Let's say you've gone to college. You can lean on a roommate. You can lean on some professors, teachers, still in that category. What's something else that as a teenager you start to lean on? Did anybody ever like you when you were a teenager? Did you ever have a boyfriend, girlfriend? You lean on a boyfriend or girlfriend, don't you? And then you get in early 20s, you start leaning on your mate. And so hopefully this person, you find somebody and you get married. So you're leaning on your spouse. You lean on your employer, your co-workers. You lean on, well, in fact now, I mean, you guys are further along in life now. Who's somebody now that you're leaning on? You start leaning on your kids, right? Throughout the course of your life, it's true of all of us. And we might think that we are very individualistic and very independent. And American culture and society, we want to celebrate rugged individualism. But at the end of the day, every one of us comes into this world leaning on people. And who we lean on, it changes throughout the seasons and the cycles of life. But God used Solomon to say this: I want you to make sure that throughout the course of your life that you're leaning on that your ladder leans against God. What's the benefit of your ladder leaning on and leaning against God? You get the right information. But let me ask you this. If I'm leaning on something, what's really important if I'm going to lean on something? The ground. What'd you say, Gene? Sturdy. It's sturdy, because if I'm going to, I mean, some of you, I don't know anybody what came in this morning with a walker, or certainly not with a walker, but with a cane. Do any of you sometimes feel a little less than steady? Right? Like if you've had a really good Saturday night. Sometimes you feel less than steady, right? And so when you feel that way, what do? You grab something. And maybe when you stand up here in a little bit when we finish, you might take hold of that pew to kind of steady yourself. You wouldn't necessarily want to steady yourself with this lectern. Why? Because it moves, it wobbles. And throughout the course of your life, as you have leaned on people, what have you discovered? Yeah, that everybody in some way or another is going to disappoint you, that they're going to be unsteady. And so when God invites us to lean on Him, one of the great things about leaning on Him is this, that He never gets tired, He never is unsteady, and He is never unreliable to lean on. And in fact, to put your full weight against, to completely lean on. And so God has invited me, He's invited you to do this. I want you to lean on me in full. I mean, put all your weight, I'm telling you, you can put all your weight on me. And instead of leaning or relying on your own understanding, if you will involve me, acknowledge me, and lean on me, He says, in all of your ways. So, how many aspects of life do you have to make decisions? There's a lot of them. There's a lot of financial decisions. I mean, a lot of you now are making a lot of big health care decisions, right? You're making insurance decisions. Those are terrible decisions. You're making employment, relational decisions. You're thinking about navigating relationships with your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren. There's tons of decisions that you're making. And very easily what we can do is to operate very independently. And I rely on me. I've got this. But God's invitation is this: if you'll lean on me, and I'm telling you, you can lean all your weight on me. If you do that, you're not going to fall. And here's the good news: I'll guide your steps. I'll guide your steps. Now, the good news is, and the principle very simply stated is this, that God wants to guide you. He wants to guide me. And that sounds almost so simple as to not even warrant making notice of, but it's really important, because God doesn't want you, He doesn't want me as His follower to live by trial and error. You say, well, that didn't work, let me try something else. God wants to spare me from the error, and that I will just trust Him, and He'll guide my steps where I should go. So as you make decisions, understand foundationally, God, sincerely, He wants to guide you. All right, so hang a right to Proverbs 18 for a second. Proverbs 18. We're going to look at verses 13 and 14. Solomon says there, the one who gives an answer before he listens, this is foolishness and disgrace for him. A person's spirit can endure sickness, but who can... No, I'm sorry, I need to skip down to verse 17. My writing is bad. Verse 17. The first to state his case seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. All right, so let's break down what these say. All right, so the one who gives an answer before he listens, this is foolishness and disgrace for him. What's that an encouragement to do? Yeah, he's talking about speaking without thinking, but even he talks about more than thinking, doesn't he? What's he saying you ought to do? Yeah, that you ought to listen. Now, and so that's based on a supposition. If you're listening, that supposes that you're getting something. What are you getting? You're getting advice, but beyond that, even more basically, you're getting information. You're getting information. All right, hold that thought for a second. Look back at verse 17. The first to state his case seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. Have you ever had somebody, well, I don't know, some of y'all watch court TV a lot? Or maybe you do, or I don't, but like, if there's a big, at any point in American life, there's typically a big case or two that's garnering some attention. That Derek Chauvin case was the most recent big one, but there's always something that's looming. And it's interesting, you can watch as an attorney is laying out, so the prosecution is laying out their case. And so you hear all these damning accusations. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you're the prosecution, what type of witnesses do you want to put on the stand? You only want to put the witnesses on the stand that support your supposition, right? And if you're a defense attorney, what type of witnesses do you want to put on the stand? You want to put the ones on there that oppose that. But it's interesting because, like, if you're sitting on a jury, you don't just hear the prosecution, do you? You hear the prosecution and the defense. Because if you just heard the prosecution, what might you say? Guilty. But if you hear the defense, you may say, well, no, there's actually a reasonable explanation for that. And so that says to me this, that when I am making a decision, I need to know all the information. I need to know all the information that I can. And so Solomon says a fool is going to just start acting without listening. Because if you're not listening, you're not getting the information that you need. And then he says here, the first to state his case seems right until another cross-examines him. It's entirely possible that somebody maybe even has tried to give you a sales pitch, or they're, I don't know, maybe you've had someone come to your house to give you estimates on something. Maybe you're going to have some work done. Maybe you're getting replacement windows, or you're getting a roof on, or you're getting a new heating HVAC system. And so let's say it's a new HVAC system, the Carrier guy or the York guy or the whatever guy, that guy shows up first and says, this piece of equipment, man, this is the best, this is the Consumer Reports, blah, 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 blah. I've been putting these in for this many years. And so you hear that guy and you're thinking what about his product? Oh, it's great, it's great. That's absolutely what I'm going to do until person number two shows up, and that's the train guy. And he's saying, well, here's X, Y, and Z, here's about our warranty, here's about our numbers, blah, 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 here's about our pricing, here's about the warranty, all this stuff. And then you're like, oh, you know, if I just heard that one, I would have gone that way. But now hearing the second one, I realized in comparison, I didn't have all the information that I needed to make the decision. This is a caution against hastiness and making sure that to the extent possible, when you're making a decision, ask yourself this, do I know everything that I need to know to make this decision? And I get it. A lot of times we want to just get stuff off of our plate. We want to say, I want to check that box. I want to be done with this so that I can move on. But sometimes you can do so in ways that will really cost you a lot of money. That can cost you a lot of heartache, cost you a lot of misery. And if you just will wait to the point where you can say, you know what, I think with a clear conscience, I can say, I know everything that I within reason can know about this, and now I can proceed. If you have enough information on the table, it's likely, at least much more likely, you're going to make a better decision. Any of you ever make a dumb one because you didn't know enough? Probably so. We all have. So God, you Solomon say, don't do that. Make sure you know enough information. All right, maybe if you're on the same page, this is in Proverbs 19, verse 2, and this is kind of building on the last thought. Even zeal is not good without knowledge, and the one who acts hastily sins. You ever know people that had a lot of enthusiasm but were just dumb? They were an enthusiastic fool. I mean, we all appreciate enthusiasm and zeal, but Solomon says zeal without knowledge, that's not good. That's not good because you can be enthusiastic and a big cheerleader of something that's wrong. And he says the one who acts hastily sins. If you act hastily, what are you doing? You're acting without thought. But there's another way that, even more basic, if I'm acting hasty, I'm just acting, well, foolish. But Are hasty decisions made slowly? They tend to be made very quickly. Now understanding this, just because a decision is made quickly doesn't mean that it's wrong. But there ought to be at least the yellow light ought to go off in my mind and in your mind. If I'm talking about a decision that has actual consequence, am I giving this some time? Because generally speaking, the rule of thumb that in fact, you can look back on your life thus far and say, and probably realize this, that the quicker that you acted, or the faster that you made decisions, do those tend to be better ones or worse ones? They probably tend to be worse ones. That's why he says that the one who acts hastily sins a lot of times, that they screw up. Verse 5 of chapter 21, you can turn there or not, but it continues the thought. It says, the plans of the diligent certainly lead to profit, but anyone who is reckless certainly becomes poor. And the contrast is there between diligence and recklessness, and implied behind that is, I believe, this, at least partially, this thought of acting hastily, almost impulsively. It's like, oh, I could do A or B. Well, I'm going to do B. But if you just press the pause button for a moment, you'd realize that options C and D are also on the table, but so is E, and E is the one that would have been best for you. But you acted so hastily. That's like, for example, I had an interview with someone on Monday afternoon for that financial assistant position. I could have very easily said on Monday, okay, you want to start next week, right? But I don't have enough information. We haven't checked any references. I don't have somebody else to be able to compare this to. I don't have another resume yet to be able to look at against. It could be that this is the best decision that we can, could, or should make. I don't know. But we're not going to act hastily in that, because to do so means that there's probably information that I don't have, and it's likely I'm going to screw up. So the principle is this: you act quickly, and more likely than not, you're going to act wrongly. So if you want some bad decisions, make them really fast. Okay? All right, hang a left just a little bit and go to Proverbs 16, verse 2. Proverbs 16, verse 2 says, all a person's ways seem right to him, but the Lord weighs motives. All right, so all a person's ways seem right to him. I want you to fill in the blank. If there was a better way, fill in the blank. If there was a better way, how would you fill that in? If there was a better way, I would do it. You ever said something like that to somebody? Because you and I all have our ways about doing things, don't we? How many of you have a routine today that looked just like yesterday and just like Monday? We have a routine for doing things, don't we? We have a routine for very basic things. For example, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you start first with the jelly or the peanut butter? How many have peanut butter? Who would start first with jelly? Isn't that interesting? I'm kind of surprised by that. Roger and Mary, y'all don't eat peanut butter and jelly? You do? Which one do you start with? Peanut butter. Nobody, no jelly in here? Why is that? But you know, that's our way. It would never occur to me. In fact, if somebody raised their hand this morning and said, I put jelly on my peanut butter and jelly sandwich first, nobody would have said it, but everybody would have thought you were weird, right? But that's our way, you right? What else do we have ways about? Yeah, honestly, how we make our hot dogs. Because I'm going to start with mustard, right? And we're particular about any and everything. But like, there's particular ways. I mean, your hair today probably looks essentially like it did yesterday. Why? Because that's how you do it. and you've got a particular way of doing that. You've got particular ways of cleaning things in your house, whether it's the stove, whether it's the carpet, whether it's the floor, whether it's, if you wash your car, it's likely there's a particular way that you start that, isn't there? There is. And somebody may say to you, well, you ought to do it this way. And it could be that you may not say it, but it's likely you're thinking, if there was a better way, that's how I would do it. Because at the end of the day, we may not say this because it sounds too prideful and haughty, but most of us probably would say, I think I'm doing stuff pretty well, right? And because honestly, who in life is saying, well, I do everything wrong, right? Well, we don't do that. We operate in ways where we think that we are doing right. And so Solomon says in verse, let me find where I was at. Yeah, verse 2 of 16, all of a person's ways seem right to him. We develop ways in which we do things, not just with routines like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but even how we deal with and how we have conversations with people, whether those are coworkers, whether those are neighbors. How many times have you known somebody, and maybe even somebody in church, that has an off-putting way? You ever known anybody like that? That how they talk to people, you're like, what is the matter with him? You ever known that? Yeah, you've experienced it. Hopefully you haven't been on the giving end of that, but you've known people, that's how they operate. If you were describing them or someone says something about them and how they talk to people, how they deal with people, have you ever used this statement? Well, that's just their way. You said that, right? Well, if that person had any idea that their way was terrible, don't you think they'd probably change it? But why don't they change it? Do what? They don't know. They think their way is okay because, generally speaking, we all think this of ourselves. I'm doing a pretty good job at this. And I do what I do for good reason. If there was a better way, I would do it. But he says the Lord does what? That the Lord weighs and the Lord understands motives. That there are, that I may talk to a person a particular way because maybe my motivation is rooted in the fact that I want to act superior, or because I think that I'm better than, or because I'm trying to get their approval, or because I'm trying to get their applause. God understands those motives. All right, so what is the encouragement then? Well, the encouragement is, as I'm making decisions, I better lean on God. Why? He understands stuff that I don't, even about my own motivations, because I think I'm pretty okay. But God knows where I'm coloring outside the lines. God knows where I'm a screw up. And so I need Him to help me, because it is possible that I could be making decisions based on ulterior motives. So that's the question. Do I have ulterior motives? With respect to that, do I even know all the time if I have ulterior motives? A lot of times I don't. Because why? I think I'm okay. I'm doing everything fine. If there was a better way, I would do it. But that's why I need God's help, because I don't even understand fully the truth about myself. All right, so I need to make sure, if I'm talking about something that's of more consequence than what I eat for lunch, I had better make sure that God is an active part of this decision so that He can help me see the truth about myself and say, Lord, in fact, and in terms of application, I would say, as you're making decisions, as I'm making them, I need to say, God, help me see the truth about myself in this. Whether or not there's some part of me that is guiding or putting my thumb on the scale in this way because there's something that's out of bounds with me. I may be blind to it, so will you help me see it? All right, so hang a right a little bit more. Let's go to Proverbs 26. This is a great one before lunch. Proverbs 26, verse 11. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. You know, dogs are great recyclers, aren't they? I don't understand dogs. It's crazy because, like Flower Pot, we could give, we don't give her like pure unfiltered spring water, but you could give your dog pure unfiltered spring water, but you know what they really like to drink? They like a good mud puddle, right? Well, don't dare give them a grape, but like you let a goose come by and bomb your yard, and your dog thinks like the Easter Bunny's been by, you know? It's crazy. But you let a dog throw up, and a dog will just say, well, let's try that again, right? I know that's gross, but it's just how they work. And so he says, well, my verse 26:11, as a dog returns to its vomit, a fool repeats his foolishness. So there's a principle here. Well, if you had to say, what's the principle in terms of decision making? It's not a hard one. Think about it. Do what? Doesn't learn. And so here's the question, and how I would phrase it. What does my past tell me? What does the past teach me? And sometimes that could be the past of others, but also the past of myself. Because the reality is this: when you make bad decisions, what type of consequences do you get? Bad decisions produce bad consequences. And if bad decisions produce bad consequences, what do fools do? They keep making those bad decisions, thinking somehow the consequences are going to change. You ever those of you that are parents, did your kids ever do that? I mean, you just had to tell them one time, right? No, but when we were kids, our parents did the same thing with us. And like parents get frustrated because you tell them don't do this, they get in trouble because of this, they get a spanking because of doing that. But then what do? They'll do it again. Why are they doing it? Because it's foolishness. It's foolishness. But we could say, well, that's the foolishness of youth. But the reality is there's nothing worse in terms of foolishness than being an old fool, right? So the encouragement of God through Solomon is this, to say, all right, as I'm trying to make a decision, what does the past teach me about this? All right, looking back on the decisions that I've made thus far, is there some bearing from that experience on this decision right now? Because it would be really dumb for me to have made that bad decision back when I was 32, and now when I'm 72 to do the same thing thinking that somehow it's going to turn out better. It just won't. Because a fool would do that. That's like a dog just returning to its vomit. That's senseless. If something made you sick, let me just bring that back in. If something caused you to experience difficulty, doing that again, that's dumb. That's foolish. So pay attention to the past. So the question is, what does the past or my past tell me? All right, hang a left just a little bit to Proverbs 18. And if you're keeping track, this is number 6 out of 8. Proverbs 18, verses 1 and 2. One who isolates himself pursues selfish desires. He rebels against all sound wisdom. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only wants to show off his opinions. You don't have to turn there. I'm going to just give this one to you. Proverbs 11, verse 4. 11, verse 14. Without guidance, a people will fall, but with many counselors, there is deliverance. All right, so hearing these two passages, what would you say is the principle? Yeah, not just listen, but I think there's two things. That's seek out wise counsel and then listen to wise counsel. And we all will do this sometimes. And my bet is that probably each of us at some point have done something like this. There was a decision that you were making, an important decision, and you knew that there was a good way and a bad way, but there's a part of you that wanted to go the bad way, and so, but you would go talk to people about it. And a lot of times what we will do is we will find somebody that would approve of the bad way. You ever do that? They would say, oh no, that's okay, that's all right. In the not so distant past, there was some conversations I had to have where an individual was getting ready to make a really bad, immoral decision with respect to personal relationships. And what they had done, though, was to talk to people who had already made that same bad decision for themselves, whose families were already in disrepair, and they would go and they would find affirmation for them, and then could say, well, you know what, I've been talking to people about this. I've gotten some advice. I've gotten some counsel. So this principle involves a couple of things. First of all, intentionally seek wise counsel. So if you want bad advice, go to an idiot. They're easy to find. But it's likely also in every one of our lives, God has positioned people that you could say, and you can look at their life, you can look at the history of decisions they've made. It's not that they're perfect, but you'd say, you know, this is a person that would tell me the truth. This is a person that would be honest with me. This is a person that God could use to help me see what I need to see in this. That's their wise counsel. So go to them, talk to them. But here's the thing. Draw a distinction between asking and selling. What do I mean by that? Have any of you ever done that? You've gone to ask an opinion from somebody, and as part of the process of asking for the opinion, you're effectively trying to sell them on it? That's a dangerous proposition. So if you actively want sound, wise counsel, don't try to put your thumb on the scale. Just say, here's the decision, here's the information, and it may be that you already know what you may like or what your preference may be in these particular things. But the caution is, as you seek that, don't try to weigh it. Don't try to use that as a sales pitch to convince them of what you've already decided to do. Seek it and then listen to it, all right? Because fools don't want to do that. People that make really bad decisions. All right, so a slight lift, Proverbs 14, verse 15. Proverbs 14, verse 15, the inexperienced one believes anything, but the sensible one watches his steps. You ever known some gullible people? They're always fun to deal with. I remember as a teenager going to camp. We were down at Caswell. I was in the 7th grade. And there were these shrimp boats out in the water. And so when we're off the coast of North Carolina, and one of the kids in high school says, this girl, Jennifer, she was about my age, hey, look at those icebergs out there. And she's like, oh my goodness, there's icebergs out here off the coast of North Carolina. Yeah, there's penguins all over it, right? You dummy. I mean, but there's always people that you can get them to believe anything. He says, the inexperienced one believes anything. He says, but the sensible one watches his steps. Now, there's an implication here. So he's contrasting inexperience and being sensible. And in terms of broad category, it's also characterizing the differences between foolishness and wisdom. But someone who is sensible, someone who is wise, is watching his steps, and within that is the thought of the direction that they are headed. So here's the broad principle. Ask yourself this: what are the consequences of this decision? What are the consequences of this decision? So many times we make decisions without thinking beyond the moment. That's true with a whole host of things. It's true about relationships. It's true about economics and financial decisions that we make. A friend of mine he works for a vehicle recovery company. And so what they do is they're contracted by banks and lending companies to repossess cars. And so I've talked to him about what busy times for them are, and he says the busy times for them are about 3 months after tax filing season. Why is that? Do what? So people get money back, And so they've got a refund, and what do? They go buy a car that they really can't afford. So they got some money to put down, but not enough to make the payments. And you can have zero money, and I promise you, you can go to a stack of places in Greensboro today, and you can drive whatever you want for a few months. But there are so many people that financially, they're making such foolish decisions because they're not considering their steps. They're saying, well, I got the money right now. Well, you can't just be saying, do I have it right now? Do I have it later? So think, what are the consequences? What does it look like 3 months down the road, 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road? What are the consequences, long-term, medium-term, really long-term, about this decision? And if you'll ask yourself that, that's going to inform what it is that you should do, and it's going to have bearing. And here's the last one. It's in Proverbs 22, verse 1. Proverbs 22, verse 1, a good name is to be chosen over great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. When it says a great name, what does that mean? I used to go to church with a guy. His name was Cleopas Eugene. That's a pretty bad one, isn't it? I don't know if his parents were angry about him or not, but that's a pretty bad one. Is that when it says a good name, is that what it's talking about? No, it's talking about what? It's talking about your reputation and your character. And at the end of the day, that's kind of all you got. Because money that you've got, it can be lost. Property that you have can be lost. Health that you can have can be lost. Money that has been lost can be regained. Positions can be lost and regained. But having character and reputation and integrity, you can lose that, and it can be difficult and impossible sometimes. In fact, it's impossible to fully regain it. So you need to ask yourself this as I'm making decisions. What impact might this have on my integrity and my reputation? Does this have bearing on my integrity and reputation? And I'm telling you, if that doesn't factor into your decisions, you are the height of and operating at the height of foolishness, because that, I mean, for everything else, there's MasterCard. But integrity, character, and reputation, you can't buy that, but you sure can lose it with some foolish decisions. We started with this premise, and it's very simple, but it's altogether important, that God wants to guide my decisions. He really does. God doesn't want me to screw up. God doesn't want me to be a fool. He doesn't want me to make dumb decisions. He doesn't want to do that for you. And He's given us some principles that if we pay attention to, it'll keep us out of the weeds. It'll keep us out of the rocks, but it's going to require some discipline. It's going to require some patience. It's going to require sometimes pressing the pause button, maybe acting a bit more slowly, a bit more deliberately, but the good news is it'll absolutely benefit us. All right? Let me pray for us and we'll call it a day. All right? God, thank you for the fact that it is true that you are good and you want to be good toward us. And one of the ways that you want to be good toward us is that you want to guide our steps. You don't want us to step on landmines and to land into pits. You want us to make decisions and choices that are beneficial to ourselves, to our families, to the kingdom, to being representatives of you. Every one of us in this room, we've made regrettable and foolish decisions at various points. But I pray, God, that we realize it doesn't have to be that way going forward. We are not doomed to foolishness. We are not doomed to mistakes if we'll take the principles you've given to us in your word and we actually act based on them. So that's our prayer, and we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for being here this morning.